All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever the case may be. On to our next lesson. We're going to now be connecting the metric system with the imperial system. Previously, we did a basic introduction of the imperial system. We already know the metric system, or we're supposed to. And so now we're going to connect between the two. And we're going to begin this connection by looking at a word problem. Beginning on page 16 is where I'm starting in the book. And the word problem under Make Connections on page 16. Two cars are driven in opposite directions from the Canada-United States border crossing. In 1 hour, Hannah drove 62 miles south, that's into the United States, and Farron drove 89 kilometers north. How could you determine which vehicle traveled farther from the border? Well, you'd have to convert them both into the same unit. So they'd have to both be miles or both kilometers, and then you would compare your two numbers, right? So, looking ahead to information that we're going to be working with in a few moments. One mile equals 1.6 kilometers in the green table on page 18, which we're going to be making some notes on in a few minutes. 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers. So if he drove 62 miles, we have to do 62 times 1.6, and we'll have them both in kilometers. Trying to find one of the other calculators here. I've been using my phone and it's annoying. So, where they are. Yeah. Oh. I suppose I shall persevere with my phone. So. Let's write down the information that we have. One car drove 62 miles, the other drove 98 kilometers. We're going to convert miles into kilometers. Okay? A kilometer is less than a mile. So if we're going to be converting miles into kilometers, there's going to be more kilometers. So 62 miles times 1.6. We said there were 1.6 kilometers in a mile, so a little more than 1.5. 62 times 1.6. That gives us 99.2. So who drove further? The car that drove 62 miles drove a bit further, about 1.2 kilometers further, because 99 take away 98 would give us a 1.2. So a simple, relatively simple problem to start off with, once you know that there's 1.6 kilometers in a mile. And there's nothing very complicated about this if you have the information. Okay, so imperial units to metric for SI units. 1 inch equals 2.5 centimeters. 1 foot equals 30 centimeters. 1 foot is about 1/3 of a meter. 1/3 or 0.3 They're roughly 3 meters in a foot. Moving over here, 1 yard equals 90 centimeters. So a meter is 100 centimeters. A yard is a bit 10 centimeters less than a meter. So it's a bit less than a meter, right? So, and a yard equals about 9/10 of a meter. You could also write that as 0.9 should you so choose. And then 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers. We can also reverse some of these by going metric to imperial. May as well do that as well. Metric to imperial. A millimeter, which is the smallest metric unit, is 4/100ths of an inch. So a millimeter is a very, not 1,000, 100, small part of an inch. Okay. Then we have 1 centimeter is 4/10ths of an inch, or 2/5 of an inch if you want to reduce them down. Or a millimeter could be 2/50ths, but it's better to go with 10, 100, and 1,000. It's easier if you can. It's not always an option, is it? 1 meter equals 39 inches. 1 meter equals about 3 1/4 foot. Like I said, there's roughly about 3 feet in a meter. There's about 3 1/4 feet in a meter. Six-tenths of a mile. An important thing to keep, a kilometer is 6/10 of a mile, which is why a kilometer or a mile is 1.6 kilometers. So you've walked a kilometer, you've walked 6/10, you've walked a little more than half a mile. So that's why I said in our previous lesson, if you start off in Netley and you walk up to the dirt road that runs down to the creek, there you've walked about a kilometer. That's only a little more than half a mile. So you're going to have to walk quite a bit further before you've walked a mile, but probably not all the way up to the highway. Just to give you a point of reference there. Now, let's look at several different word problems. You'll find those on pages 1, 2, and 3, and keep this chart as a reference as we work through. On page 18, and there's a green box with the measurements in. They tended to use more decimals. I tended to use more fractions. So a bowling lane is approximately 19 meters long. What is this measurement to the nearest foot? So what we're dealing with here is just a bunch of examples, right? 19 meters to feet. Look at the table. A meter has 3 1/4 feet, right? So we're going to do 19 times 3 1/4. Now there's a variety of different ways we could do this. We could do improper fractions. We could do a decimal. I'm going to go with a decimal. The decimal for 3 1/4, right? 1 meter equals 3 1/4 feet. The decimal for a quarter is 0.25. So 19 times 3.25. Just simply a different way of doing it, right? You could have turned 3 1/4 into the improper fraction. But this again is the easier method, is converting that little fraction into a decimal, which is 0.25. 19 times 3.25 is 61.75. What is 0.75 as a fraction? 3/4. So this will become 61 3/4 feet, almost 62 feet. The next example they have, it's right on page 18, I'll just write it down. We want to do 59 meters to feet. We already, 1 meter is 1 3/4 feet. We already recorded that. So I'm just going to proceed with the same thing, 3.25. $191.75, which is simply 191 3/4 of a foot. Good. Next example we'll find on page 19. I guess you heard that announcement, burgers for lunch. The example on page 19 already did that one. We're saying here 62 miles, 98 kilometers, compare the two here. But we'll do this one. 114 kilometers and 68 miles. We'll do that one. So we'll convert the miles into kilometers. There's 1.6, right? 1.6 kilometers equals 1 mile from your table, right? So we'll take the miles. We could have done the kilometers, but we'll convert miles to kilometers. You only need to do one of them. Then they're both in the same unit and we can compare. My goodness. Okay. 68 times 1.68 times 1.6. 108.8 kilometers. Who drove further? The person who drove 114 kilometers was further. A few more examples on page 20. Let's read the first problem here. Alex is 6 feet 2 inches tall and he needs to be in centimeters. So what is Alex's height to the nearest centimeter? All right, let's work our way through that one. So we're going 6 feet 2 inches. We want to have that in centimeters. So 6 feet. Let's do the feet first. How many centimeters are in a foot? Do we have a measurement for that? Yes, about 4/10 of an inch. 1 inch has 2.5 centimeters. So let's do these feet in inches. Let's put this all into inches first of all, then we can work from there. So this is already 2 inches, so 6 feet. How many inches in a foot from the previous lesson? 12. Times 6 is 72. Add the 2 inches. We have 74 inches. Now, from your table, how many inches are in a foot? Take a look. 1 inch equals 2.5 centimeters, 2.5. So this becomes relatively simple. The centimeter is the smaller unit. There'll be more of them. 74 times 2.5. is 185 centimeters. Let's just do one more example, then we can move on to homework and exercises. I'm finding that one on page 20 as well, and this time we're doing 5 feet and 7 inches into centimeters. Well, we got the 7 inches already, so let's just do the same procedure. 5 times 12 equals 60, add 7. We now have 67 inches, and again, 2.5 centimeters in an inch. $167.5 centimeters. It could also be rounded up to 168 if need be. Now then, exercises you will find on page 22. Now let's write those down first of all. So your homework, 4, 8, 9, 10. 9, 10. 4, 8, 9, 10. Sorry, this should say page 22. They're all on the same page. 4, 8, 9, 10. Pause a bit so you write those down, and then we'll go over those 4 exercises. This lesson is shaping up to be a lot shorter than the previous marathon was, but that's because it's built on the previous knowledge and we could just apply it and not have to review it again. So it's going to be really important for you to be really solid with lesson 1 before proceeding with lesson 2. All right, let's go to page 22 and go over these exercises. Convert each measurement answer to the nearest tenth. So again, we're going 16 inches into centimeters, 4 feet into meters, and so on. And you look at each of those, you look at the conversion from the chart, the way you go. If you have questions about that, 16 inches into centimeters, we already know that's 2.5. We did a couple of examples, so 16 times 2.5. 4 feet into meters. How many feet are in a meter? Where is that number here? 3 1/4, so that's 3.25. 4 times, this is going to be less, right? So a meter is bigger than a foot, so your answer is going to be less. So do you multiply? No, you don't. 4 divided by 3.25. So again, be careful about what you're doing. Is the answer going to be bigger or smaller? That depends on the units that you're working with. Okay, number 4. Okay, number 8. All the way down here. The dimensions of a lacrosse field are 110 yards by 60 yards. What are they to the nearest meter? Well, you take the 110 and the 60, and you do each one separately. So, from yards into meters, let's look at our table here. A yard is about 9/10 of a meter, so that's, or 0.9, if you want to use a decimal. 0.9 is the same as 9/10. And all you would do is take the numbers, 10, so it's going to be less. There's going to be less meters than yards. So 110 times 0.9 and 60 times 0.9. And those are your new dimensions. Then whatever the answers are to those two, those are your dimensions in meters. Very straightforward. Number 8. Yeah. Number 9. Euphrasia River is apparently approximately 1,375 kilometers long. The Tennessee River is approximately 880 miles. Which one is longer? Well, we've already done similar problems to this one a couple of times. convert these miles into kilometers and compare the two numbers. 886, we've done that twice, miles to kilometers in your table here. 1.6. A kilometer is less than a mile. That means it'll be getting bigger. There's going to be more kilometers, right? Take this number, multiply by 1.6, compare the two. That's number 9. And then finally, number 10 is your last one. Notice I'm giving you larger numbers, unlike what I did in the first lesson to work with. The first lesson we had just the one example at the end. So she sees this road sign, Helena, Montana, 87, and she tests the accuracy of her car's odometer and tracks the distance she drove from that sign, which said 142 kilometers. So the question is, are 87 miles 142 kilometers? How can you find out? Multiply by blah, 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 and check, right? So on page 22, 4, 8, 9, and 10 is your homework for this lesson. Just write this down underneath the homework. There will be a review that counts for marks. This week. I'll be putting that up sometime after Monday. So these two lessons are going to be up on YouTube for you beginning on Monday morning. And then there'll be a review showing up, a review lesson where I'll be going over the review. You'll be doing that review and handing it in for marks sometime after Monday, sometime after Monday morning. So these two recordings, lessons 1 and 2, and then the review, that's all of your math for the first week of school. So be on the lookout for the review on the YouTube channel. And that brings us to the end of this one. 22 minutes and 40